Fear and Hunger is a horror game that focuses on the violence and depravity of humanity, and I think no character exemplifies this better than the little girl. For reference, I'm about 2 hours into Fear and Hunger, which is like 5 minutes according to my save file, and I've died too much to make a cohesive Let's Play, so this is just my first impressions and theories on the game. What I've gathered from Fear and Hunger is that the very dungeon that you enter is designed to amplify gluttony. When you step into the dungeon, it creates an unnatural hunger, both literal and metaphorical. Your character desires food just as much as they desire to fulfill any of their selfish urges inside a dungeon who's designed to make sure that they do the opposite. It transforms everyday people into deprived versions of themselves. Guards are grotesque giants, humans are merged homunculi who struggle to do the most basic of functions, and everyone you talk to will seemingly try to use you for their own desires. If they can talk, half of them don't even do that. Then there's the little girl, who has lived in the dungeon for who knows how long. That sucks. I played as the knight and got her out of the cage and realized she also kinda sucks. From a mechanical perspective, the player cannot talk to her, she cannot deal damage, she requires food, she is objectively a debt on your resources. But I think that's what makes her really interesting. Your only motivation for helping her, at least so far in my 2 hours of playtime, is that this world sucks. It is simply empathy. By the end of the 2 hours of playtime, I had found a knife that you can hand over to the little girl as an act of survival. If you think about it selfishly, you can view it as the knight giving it to her out of self-preservation. She is now able to deal damage in your team, and it makes the fights easier. But to the little girl, even the act of giving her anything at all, let alone a means to defend herself, is a meaningful act of kindness. And you could argue that everything from letting her free to giving her a weapon is in some way selfish, which brings me to the doll, which I think has no mechanical purpose. In one of the cells, you find a doll which, when given to the little girl, I think is actually the first time that someone has selflessly invested their time and energy into her without a meaningful reward, just to nurture her psychological development. As I was playing through the game, there were moments where the little girl had died or I had taken too much damage, in which case I started doing what I call suicide runs, trying to gain as much information about the level as possible before resetting. You run around, you find a pit, you think, yeah, that'll kill me. What's in it though? And you jump in. In one of these runs, I discovered a summoning circle which is connected to a variety of deities in the game. But I don't trust any deity in Fear and Hunger. In my session, I found out about Grogroth and Zyan and Almer. I butchered all those names, I'm sure. And praying or sacrificing to those gods allows you to do something. I only had the little girl with me, and I did not want to kill her. I would feel bad. Sue me. Presumably, praying affects some sort of faith stat, and sacrifices affect that stat even more so. But every sign in Fear and Hunger tells a different story of a god's willingness to do anything. You find letters to gods old and new, statues covered in blood, wishing for divine intervention, no cries of which seem to be heard. If deities do exist in Fear and Hunger, the value and safety of humanity is not their priority. It is during one of these runs where I discovered things like the merchant who hangs outside of the dungeon. He will sell a variety of bootleg potions for the sole purpose of making a few coins. The potions of which don't match any of the potions you've ever seen in any of the potion making books that you might have. And that's because they're defective, even harmful to the player. This to me goes back to the theme of hunger and the urge for characters to fulfill their own selfish desires. Almost every character I've talked to seems to socialize or interact with you for the sole purpose of exploiting you. Some of the characters will interact with you and even attempt to befriend you, only to steal from you or kill you. Ironically, some of the best characters that I've ran into are characters who want nothing to do with me, which is ironic because now I want to be with them. During one of my suicide runs, I ran into Pocket Cat, who appears to be a version of the Boogeyman, a creepy character who takes children, and he seems more than willing to take your hands off the little girl, someone who up to this point, mechanically, has served little purpose. If you give her up, you gain access to necromancy, or a claymore, or a few other weapons, and while objectively it seems like an easy answer, Less mouths to feed for a better weapon. It forces you to consider the ethics of selling her off, how it'll affect her physical and emotional development, and how you yourself are playing into the apathy and greed that the dungeon creates. And that is as far as I've gotten. I find it beautiful that in a game about cruelty and greed, one of the most impactful things you can do so far is have empathy and value others. That's what I think about Fear and Hunger. I'll make another one of these when I get further along, if I can stop dying every 5 minutes.